Riley Findley asks what I think about the role of natural theology in faith. As with everything, it depends on what you mean by the term in question. So, as far as natural theology goes, I'm more comfortable saying what I think is legitimate than I am saying whether I affirm or reject natural theology as such, because what natural theology as such means to a given person might not be what I mean. So, I think that there are sound arguments for the existence of God, where, given the nature of the premises, which I think can be defended as deductively true, given the nature of the premises, the existence of God as existence is understood by the Orthodox tradition, logically follows. So, John of Damascus begins his exact exposition of the Orthodox faith with a philosophical argument for the existence of God. St. Gregory Palamas, his 150 chapters, which is actually based on John of Damascus's exact exposition of the Orthodox faith in terms of its structure. He begins with the same way. The arguments that they present are based on certain Aristotelian, I'm not going to say assumptions because they aren't assumptions, but I will say premises. They're based on certain Aristotelian premises, and they are based on certain ideas in Aristotelian metaphysics, which are not taken on board without modification, but they do have some real relationship to that classical tradition. Where I do have a problem with what has been called natural theology in aspects of the Western tradition is with this idea that you can demonstrate rationally that God exists, but to say that God exists as Trinity requires supernatural revelation, and that cannot be derived naturally. Now, in order to give a proper answer to this question, one has to understand very precisely what one thinks of, or what one means by nature, natural, and supernature, or supernatural. Because we use these terms today, they're very common, and what they mean today is only marginally related to what I think they mean traditionally and what I mean by them. So, to give an example, if you take an angel, angels are generally classified as a supernatural being, according to contemporary parlance. But angels, in reality, they have their own distinct nature, which is fortified and deified by the corresponding supernature. So when I say supernatural, what I mean is that uncreated aspect of divine life, which is imprinted on the canvas of contingency, that is, those sorts of things which do not have to exist, but have existence because God freely extends himself to give of his own qualities in a contingent expression. So creation out of nothing. In one sense, it is creation out of nothing. In another sense, it is creation as an imprint, a stamp of God's own mode of existence. So this is the legitimate way in which I understand the notion of analogy. Human beings are an analogy of the divine life. They exist in their nature as an imprint of the divine nature. And because of the sort of imprint that they are, they can be realized in terms of their natural potentials as they are developed into actualities. They can be realized in those actualities by participation in the supernature, which is present in their nature by analogy. I'm sure there's a better way to say that, but I have talked about this in my apophatic theology series. Now, my problem with saying that we can understand the existence of God from natural theology, but not the Trinity, apart from supernatural revelation, is because God does not exist as Trinity contingently. He doesn't exist as Trinity, just for no reason at all, as if God could be God as something other than Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Instead, God exists as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit because that is the only way in which his divine perfections are what they are. So God, being God, has the totality of divine existent perfections. everything which could exist as a quality or property of existence exists infinitely and supremely in the life of God. And these divine qualities, these divine perfections are what they are because they are extensions of divine life in relation. So God the Father extends himself outside of himself in relation to the Son and in conjunction with the Holy Spirit. So for God to exist fully, and that is intrinsic to who and what God is, the Trinity is a precondition for that. So when one understands what it means for these perfections to exist as perfections, I think the Trinity unfolds and follows out from that. Now, it is the case that our natural reason is only brought to the innate goal of its existence through its union with and fortification by the corresponding supernatural power. So nature and supernature, they are meant to exist together. Our nature is fortified by the corresponding supernature, and that occurs by our participation in divine energies, the divine actualities, the divine perfections, which are all different ways of saying the same thing, through the Holy Spirit in the incarnate Word, who is the Word of the Father. Now, to refer to the Word as the Word is to refer to God as he extends himself outwards. He speaks in the Son. The Son is begotten of the Father and is an exact imprint of everything which is divine in the Father and exists in a fatherly way in the Father. And that speech echoes back to the Father through the Holy Spirit, because the Father speaks through the Spirit to the Son, and the Son reciprocates to the Father. And the Holy Spirit carries the life of Father to Son and Son to Father from all eternity in a timeless, eternal relationship where movement towards or initiation is immediately followed by reception and reciprocity. So to refer to the Son, the second person, as the Word refers to God as he extends himself outwards, and to refer to the second person as the wisdom of God is to signify the second person of the Trinity as he comes back towards the Father. So wisdom is that through which God knows everything there is to know. And to say something is knowable is to mean it is a quality of or property of existence. And so the Father knows himself truly in the mirror of his brightness in the eternal Son. The essential point here is that all of these are qualities or properties of existence. Qualities or properties of existence are known as what they are through our reason, in large part. And our reason can only fulfill its innate potential, its purpose, by union with its corresponding supernatural archetype. So I do not think it is possible in principle to separate the proof for God's existence from God's existence as who God is, which is Trinity, who couldn't exist anything other than Trinity. Now, it is also the case that our reason has been touched by the wound of the fall, which means we know the creation, but in knowing it, we know it in varying degrees wrongly. There's something in it which is intrinsic to its being what it is. So let's just take a leaf. A leaf being what it is what it is because God is imprinting himself at every moment on that leaf and realizing it as a particular thing within the world with particular qualities, which are echoes of his divine qualities. And it being what it is, it says something about God. It declares a particular aspect of his nature. But you have a naturalist who walks through a forest and he sees the leaf and he thinks God does not exist. It is not that he agrees with us that the universe exists, but disagrees about the existence of God. It is that he does not fully perceive what it means for the universe to exist. So our natural reason is wounded in that it does not at every moment fulfill its intrinsic end, which is the knowledge and contemplation of God. So supernatural grace, that uncreated life of God, which is communicated to us through the Son in the Spirit, that supernatural life of God both reorders our reason, guides it to the fulfillment of its purpose, and glorifies our natural reason in that it was always the efficient cause for the realization of our reason and its purpose. So that logic, which I've just suggested, is something which, by the way, if people have commented on that, I don't see your comments at the moment because I like to try to stay on one train of thought as much as I can. I'm about to look at your comments, but let me get an article of mine up, which I shared in the last live stream. All right. Okay. Okay. Give me a second. So that's the article. It basically is on Palamas's 150 chapters on the kind of logic that Palamas uses to identify God's self-existence and to distinguish what it means for God to exist in the Orthodox tradition from the concept of existence, which is present in large amounts of the classical tradition. So what I've just suggested in terms of the relation of divine perfection, divine existence to the Trinitarian life is something which Western theologians, I think in large part, but as I say, it's up to you to decide whether this is, and you here as generic you, everyone listening, it's up to you to decide whether this is something you personally agree with or whether you would say it differently. But as far as I know, most Western theologians have followed Aquinas in holding that the Trinity is something which, even in principle, is only knowable through supernatural revelation and which could not be known from natural reason, that being what it is. But there are Western theologians who take a different view. Richard of St. Victor, for example, holds that you can make a philosophical argument for the existence of God as Trinity. And while I'm, of course, not throwing my weight behind everything that he says, I would agree that if one makes an argument for God's existence based on the intrinsic qualities of existence, then what that means is one is going to ultimately arrive at God's existence as Trinitarian God, because he exists as Trinity, because he is God, and his existence as God is not contingent. He is self-existent. Okay,